Chapter 5 Getting There from Here. Sally sat in the doorway of the doghouse, looking out into the yard and trying to figure out how to solve her predicament. Sally folded the napkin and paper from her muffin and put it in the pocket of Gwen's blue sweater. Her blueberry muffin had been delicious, but eating it had woken up her bowels, and now Sally needed to go really badly. The backyard didn't give her any answers. There were just the same old chewed dog toys that were there last night, the boring patio furniture, and the garden. Then Sally remembered something her best friend Tia had told her once. Tia's family went camping a lot, and when there were no porta-potties around, Tia would just go squat in the bushes. Sally had thought that was kind of gross when Tia had told her about it, but now that she was faced with the same predicament, it seemed like a pretty good option. Sally looked around the backyard for some bushes. These people had a very well-groomed yard, despite the fact that they had a dog who chewed things. Sally noticed some potted plants on the patio. That wouldn't work. Sally crawled out of the doghouse to look behind her. She stretched her legs and arms with a really big yawn, then broke into a huge smile. There, behind the garden, in the corner, was a clump of bushes. Sally rushed over to find the perfect spot. It was a bit tricky, squatting while holding Gwen's sweater over her head so it wouldn't get dirty, but Sally figured it out. Just as she was pondering what to do about wiping, the napkin and muffin paper slipped out of the pocket of the royal blue sweater. Sally laughed out loud with relief. She had sensitive skin and was not excited about the idea of using a leaf. Just as Sally was kicking dirt over her deposit, she heard something out on the street. She froze, hoping no one would notice her. It was a man with a briefcase coming out of a house and getting into a green convertible. He must be going to work, Sally thought. Then she remembered she had a job to do, too. She needed to go find the crazy cat lady. Clicking the latch on the fence, Sally peered through the iron bars one last time. She was pleased with the parade of dog toys she had gathered from the yard and lined up next to the doghouse. Mom did say to leave a place better than she found it, and that was the best thing Sally could think of to do. She even lined the toys up inside the doghouse, even though touching the slimy half-chewed rawhide bone was not her favorite thing to do. With the blue blanket with the pink hearts on it tied around her neck like a cape, Sally's hands were free and her mind was clear. She put her hands on her hips to think about what to do next. She didn't know where she was, so she couldn't find her school from here. Sally decided to do her best to backtrack to where she had met Orangey, the cat, yesterday. That was right near the park, she remembered. Sally did not like the idea of going almost home to take the sidewalk route to the school. She would have to be really careful not to be seen, but she was determined to find the cat lady's house and needed to get to the school first to do it. Sally took a deep breath and looked around. She felt very proud for sleeping all by herself in a doghouse in a strange neighborhood. But her mind wanted to wander to Mom, Alex, Rennie, and their morning ritual. They would sing the good morning song and get dressed, then do their hair. The thought of hair reminded Sally of the birthday present she had picked out for Rennie. Rennie had curly red hair and loved wearing bows and barrettes in it, so Sally had picked out a big bucket of hair accessories for her, which included sparkly star clips that she knew Rennie would love. Sally had wrapped it herself and hid it under the bottom bunk bed. Suddenly, Sally realized she had missed Rennie's birthday dinner. Sally caught her lip quivering and stomped her Batman boot hard. No, she was not going to cry. I was right, she told herself. She had chosen to take a walkabout and would not let herself be sad. She knew she was right. Or was she? Somehow, her I'm right land didn't seem so appealing to her today. Just then, the most beautiful sound Sally had ever heard wafted over the trees. It was the familiar melodic chime of the recess bell from her school, and it sounded very near. Sally started running down Red Baron Road, following the sound away from the church and down a hill. When the chime stopped, so did Sally. She was at a corner. She looked up at the street sign and jumped for joy. Earhart Road! That was the street her school was on. She looked left, and there it was, just ahead of her, Lindbergh Elementary. It had never looked so beautiful. Sally let 4 tears of joy seep out before wiping her face with the blanket cape and looking both ways before crossing the street. She ran up Earhart Road past the fenced-in portable classrooms to the parking lot. Sally had fabulous memories of this place. Okay, so she'd only been out on summer break for 2 weeks, but it felt like forever. Her feet missed the walk every weekday morning. Her tongue missed Tia's homemade oatmeal cookies, which she always shared with Sally. And her heart missed her happy teacher and their daily class routine. She looked around to see if anyone was there. She thought she heard heavy breathing from somewhere behind her, but turned and saw only parked cars and houses. Sally's brain was too excited to think about all the clues that led to the fact that she might not be alone on her walkabout. Sally was at school. The parking lot had a few cars in it, and Sally was curious who was around and why. But before her curiosity could carry her on a sidetrack, she spotted a black and white cat sitting on the kickball diamond and ran frantically toward it. Her enthusiasm did not distract the black and white tomcat from his bath at all. He licked his paw, looked down his nose at Sally, and gingerly cleaned behind his ears. This was one of the cats Tia and Sally had tried to entice into the playground during school, and here he was now, ready to play kickball. Sally's feline frenzy took over, and she was on her belly right beside him. "I'm going to call you Pinguino," she cooed, oblivious to the red dirt and gravel that now decorated Gwen's blue sweater. Pinguino was the Spanish word for penguin. Sally knew this from watching Dora with Rinny. This cat was black with a white belly, just like the Arctic bird, so Pinguino was the perfect name. Pinguino the tomcat was much cooler and more aloof than Orangey had been, but he tolerated Sally's high-pitched squeals until he was done with his bath. Then he promptly got up and headed toward the fence. Sally scrambled up and followed him. He headed across the field toward the far corner of the school, where a gray metal storage cube sat next to a rider lawnmower and some other gardening equipment. Pinguino leapt gracefully from the lawnmower to the top of the gray metal storage cube, and then disappeared over the chain-link fence into the twisty trees on the other side. Sally frantically scanned the fence for an opening. There was none, and she had no time to run back through the school to go around the fence. She headed toward the gate, but knew before she got there it would be locked. It always was. There was only one thing to do: climb. Batman boots are not the best for climbing over lawnmowers, onto gray metal storage cubes, and over chain-link fences into twisty trees. Neither is having a lady's sweater hanging down to your knees or a blanket tied around your neck like a cape. Sally got all caught up and twisted in the trees and had quite a battle getting down. But somehow she did, without breaking or ripping anything. Pinguino was sitting on the sidewalk calmly, and Sally let out a grateful "thanks for waiting." He seemed to nod at her, then lifted his tail and practically pranced off, glancing behind to make sure she was following. She was, and soon they were around the corner and crossing the street. Pinguino didn't bother to look both ways, but Sally did, and made sure it was safe to cross. Sally was getting very excited about meeting all those new cats and the crazy cat lady's house. But then something horrible occurred to her. What if the crazy cat lady's cats started snarling like the kitties had done in her dream? She could almost hear the growling and thought she felt something pulling her down. Sally stopped abruptly on the sidewalk, unable to walk any further. Sally wasn't sure how long she'd been standing there, frozen in fear. When she snapped out of it, Pinguino was gone, and Sally was getting hot. "Poop or get off the pot," came a gravelly grunt behind her. Sally spun around and found herself face to face with a shriveled, bent-over lady in black. The old woman's face was twisted, and her hands clutched a walker that had mail lying on the built-in seat in front of her. "What?" Sally sputtered. "Well, are you gonna get out of an old woman's way or make her trip and break a hip?" Sally was still in shock, but moved to the side and let the woman shuffle and roll by. Sally must have looked a sight, because the lady looked her up and down, then made a "t" sound through her dentures. The lady wobbled slowly ahead and turned right up a driveway. Some courageous part of Sally came swooping in, and she found herself running in front of the old woman and asking, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you the cat lady?" The woman stopped in her tracks. "Bleep, no," she spat. Sally was shocked at the profanity. Normally, adults watched their tongues around 8-year-olds and added a sugary tone to their words. But Sally was oddly relieved and let out a long sigh. "You're looking for old Lucy Montgomery 2 doors down," hissed the woman. She threw her chin to the left in a curt motion, pointing, and then had to readjust her dentures with her tongue to put them back in place. "I hate those cats. They pee in my garden bark." As if on cue, Pinguino leapt over the woman's fence from her backyard and meandered onto her driveway. "Scat!" hissed the woman, and Pinguino sprinted away down the street. Sally mumbled a thank you and got out of the way of the walker, running to catch up with Pinguino. The old woman was rattling on about other animals she hated, dogs that pooped in her hydrangeas, rabbits that ruined the grass, even birds that left droppings on her car. But Sally didn't hear her. She was fully focused on getting herself to the house 2 doors down.